Is that on?
Yeah.
It's on a record?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to thank all my relatives who came here to do this little ceremony that I wanted to do for my dad. Here to support me and show their love for my dad, so I really appreciate that. Um, my dad was no saint, and I don't want him to make him out to be, and he certainly wouldn't want me to do that. We had our struggles throughout my life. It was a bit of a rocky road over time, but my dad was a no BS kind of guy, and I certainly don't want to make him out as a saint, but I do have some things that I want to say on his behalf as his oldest son. One of the proudest moments I had with my dad was when one time I brought him to Vancouver with me to a studio that I was doing a interview for, and I brought him right in the studio, and he was actually standing behind the camera, and so I did my thing, I did my interview, and I could tell that he was really proud, and so I thought it was important that I say some things today for my dad since he passed away. Some of the things that my dad loved, one of them was betting on horse races. I spent a lot of time going to the racetrack with my dad, and he used to always give me a hard time that if he was in a city and he knew I was there, he knew where to find me. He'd just go to the racetrack. So that was a place that my dad and I spent a lot of time. He loved playing cards. Everybody says he was a quiet person. That would have to be anybody that didn't play cards with him, but because he certainly wasn't quiet when it came to playing cards. I can see some smiles here, so I know that that's a fact. Something he was very talented at was pool. My dad competed at it. He played professionally. He played for money at it, and he was very skilled at it. And when I was young, I remember that, seeing my dad do something very well like that always gave me confidence when I played sports or anything like that. And he spent a lot of time in the pool also. That was something that he loved. He really hated to lose. I share that with him. In fact, when I was a little kid, oftentimes your father will let you win at things. My dad never let me win at anything. When I was young, Bobby Fischer was a big thing in 1973 because he won the world championship in chess. Practically everybody was playing chess back then. I wanted to learn. So my dad taught me, and he would play his hardest against me every time. Once in a while, finally I beat him. He never played me again after that. That's how much my dad didn't like to lose. Of course, he loved his step family. My stepmother, Marg, and he referred to her as Mary. My Auntie Mary was very important in his life as well, and so that was definitely something that he loved, was my step family and Marg. And his mom and dad. That's why I'm doing it here today in front of his mom's grave. My grandma was really important to all of us, and that's why we're doing it here. A little bit about my dad's life story. My parents moved to the coast when I was 2 years old. He loved British Columbia, the mountains. He loved the coast. He would always brag about how great it was, and that was something that he was very proud of. And I always would give him a hard time and tell him, Dad, that's the best thing you ever did for me in your entire life, was moving us down there so we could live there and grow up there, because it is a spectacular place to live, and I'm very fortunate and blessed to live there, and I can thank my father for that. We spent a lot of time on the road over the years, having trips up here to McLennan, and that's why, this was an important thing to do with my son, was to come up here. The day after my dad passed, I got a message from him from the spirit world, and he told me that he wanted to come on a last road trip, and so that I could do something for him in front of my family, in front of his mother and father. It showed me a couple of things. One, he told me what he wanted me to do for him. a second thing that it told me was that he was safe in the spirit world. My dad and I had a bad car accident when I was 8 years old, and I remember that I was knocked unconscious for a day or something like that, and I woke up for like 30 seconds during that process, and my dad was on my lap, and he had blood everywhere, and I thought he was dying, and you know, it was really scary, and I know that he's safe now, so that means a lot to me. As I said, we had a rocky road. It was not a smooth road being my dad's son, but I wouldn't change anything. I am who I am because of that. When he passed, I told my mom that for the first time in my life, my heart allowed me to forgive him. But I'm glad that he asked me to do this trip because it gave me a great bonding opportunity with my son. Along the way, I shared many of the stories about our trips with my dad. As I did, I realized why I've been calling this a healing journey. I didn't realize so much that it was for me to heal. I had some stories from his family that I wanted to pass along. We came over here in a 4 or 5 car caravan. I had planned on doing that from the coast, but we had to kind of change plans. Uncle Oscar and my dad were very tight, and I remember that when we were young, we used to do these road trips, and we'd have a car caravan, and that's what we were attempting to do. Finally, we got it done. Just a little example of the kind of guy my dad was. Uncle Oscar, when he was young, was in a lot of trouble, and they said that he basically had a decision to go to jail or to move away from here, and my dad went to the court to got him to be able to move down to the coast instead of going to jail. And my uncle lived down there for a long time, and so this part of the healing journey was really important to me, and it finally came together today that we did our car caravan. I brought this box and it's really important to me for a couple of reasons. One is that my dad he had a very large art collection, West Coast Native art. He worked as a counselor in the prisons because he was able to speak Cree, and the inmates were so appreciative of the work that he did for them that they would often give him art, and he had a museum quality collection of art, and he dealt in the art as well. So one of the places that he dealt in that art is a place called Hills Native Art in Vancouver. It's world famous, and I got this box down there. It's a wood box done with West Coast Native art, and I thought that was an important thing to bring here for him. But I also have a cousin, Cashton, and Cashton, I asked him to do a really important job for me. I wanted to sort of combine what our culture of the Cree people up here and the West Coast. And one thing that our Cree culture did when people passed was they would either bury them in a small shallow grave, or they would do some monument in rocks. And so I had Cashton go and select a group of rocks out of at one of my favorite places in Vancouver is called the Museum of Anthropology. In the Museum of Anthropology, they had the most spectacular collection of Native art in the world, and it's my favorite place. I took my son there many times when he was young, and they have a rock garden outside, and in that rock garden I had Cashton go and select some rocks for me. I asked him because he's pure in his heart, and I knew that he would do a great job, and he did a phenomenal job. He was so careful. He brought some rocks that I think are really important. He did a wonderful job. He brought there's some shells in there, and he cleaned out all the shells really well. And why that's important to me is, as I said, my dad loved the West Coast. He loved the ocean, he loved the mountains, and this comes from the ocean, so I thought that's important. To our Cree culture, rocks are important because they are like the memory source for us. They're what keeps our memories. And so Cashton picked a great group of rocks to put in this box. And I'm going to leave this box here. I hope it stays here for a very long time. If these rocks in this box end up going somewhere else, I guess that was the place that they were supposed to go. But for today and for my dad, this is where it's going to go. Bernice said something really wonderful to me the other day. And she said, I was telling her some of the struggles that I had with my dad, as him being my dad. And Bernice said to me that she never had a bad memory of my dad. And I think that pretty much speaks for itself. I think if anybody says that about any of us, I think that's a wonderful thing. So thanks for letting me know that, Bernice. And earlier this morning I was asking my cousin Maureen if she had any stories, and she told me about Laureen. My uncle Richard one time he was in a bit of a struggling time. He didn't have any money for Christmas, and he told my dad, and my dad gave my Uncle Richard the money, but neither Uncle Richard or my dad knew that Laureen had heard what had happened. And so she told Maureen that about what she had heard, and she said, you know, to make sure to act surprised. She said it was something that she'll never forget. And Laureen, before my dad passed away, got to tell my dad about that story at the reunion. So you know, and that's another kind of thing that my dad would do. And finally, before I close things off, I wanted to say something that my Auntie Grace prepared for me. And she said that my brother was always close with me. I remember when he lived in Falher, when he was a barber. Actually, I have pictures of that. The boys were very young. My brother and I, Greg, were very young. He always got along well with his siblings. My favorite memory of my brother was when we got married. He told me he couldn't make it to the wedding, and as the reception started, he was starting. He walked into the hall, and that meant so much to my auntie. She said she just cried, and she has so many wonderful memories of her brother. He always enjoyed the dry meat. I think part of what he enjoyed about getting dry meat was that he could brag to everybody that he had dry meat and they didn't have dry meat. And the fried bannock, he loved that as well. And she says that it seems so hard to believe that he is gone. I miss him so much. I can't forget. He also loved bingo. Oh, we also can't forget he loved bingo. When he lived in Grimshaw, I always saw him at the bingo with Mary. He always liked to play bingo in Falher. I love you, my brother. Always missed, but never forgotten. Love your sister and all your siblings. So, in closing, I just wanted to say that I forgive you, Dad. I love you. I'm glad you're safe in the spirit world. And say hi to my grandma. Thank you.